I'm a consultant to Boston Scientific. That's my disclosure. I was a principal investigator for the global Eluvia trial. So here are the sponsored studies from Boston Scientific of the Paclitaxel-Eluting devices. First is the Eluvia drug-eluting stent, the Majestic first-in-human, the Imperial randomized pivotal trial, the Eminent and Regal trials, which are currently enrolling. One is randomized and one is single-arm. The Ranger DCB paclitaxel-coated balloon has a randomized trial. It's in 3-year follow-up in 2019, and Ranger 2 pivotal trial, 1-year follow-up in 2019, ongoing for 5 years. And then there's a below-the-knee program called the Saval, which is a drug-eluting stent, very much like the SFA, but designed for the infrapopliteal vessels. It has both randomized and single-arm phases, and it's currently enrolling. So here's the Eluvia drug-eluting stent data set. First, it's a fairly low concentration of paclitaxel on the stent surface, 0.167 micrograms per millimeter squared. The FDA approved this stent in September of 2018. It received CE mark over 2 years prior. It's a self-expanding stent on a purpose-built Lenovo stent platform with a biostable polymer mixture and the dosing that I mentioned before. Here's the clinical trial program of Eluvia. The pivotal multicenter Imperial trial, 465 patients randomized 2-to-1 worldwide with 1-year follow-up complete, reported and published. 2-year data should be available sometime in the next couple of months. The Majestic trial was a first-in-human 57-patient trial, and 3-year follow-up is complete. The remaining are enrolling, and we don't have data for them. So here's the Majestic trial data set, fairly typical patient population with multiple comorbid risk factors. And the summary of all deaths in Majestic out to 3 years is that there was exactly 2 deaths out of 55 patients in follow-up. One of those was cardiac and one of them was non-cardiac. Specifically, a patient died in a nursing home due to cardiac death, so a patient was obviously frail and ill. And the other one was a complication from metastatic squamous cell carcinoma and adjudicated as a non-cardiovascular death. The Imperial clinical study overview has been discussed at length in prior talks today. I'm not going to go through this again, except to reiterate that it was a 2-to-1 randomization against another paclitaxel device, so we don't have a non-paclitaxel horse in this race. As relates to the baseline patient characteristics, you see there's really no differences among the various sets of patients, both in the randomized trial as well as a long lesion subset and the PK numbers. Here are the summary of deaths in the randomized control arm for both arms. All deaths were adjudicated in Eluvia at 2%, for Zilver PTX 3.9%. This is at 1 year. Cardiac deaths, where there was 3 in the Eluvia arm, and there were 3 non-cardiac deaths in the Eluvia arm as well. For Zilver, the majority of deaths were in the cardiac category and 1 vascular death. And if we look at the causes of death, I'm not going to read them off, so you can take a breath. They're largely unremarkable in terms of any clustering. We don't see any. It seems fairly robustly distributed across the entire spectrum of causes of death. PK study is important. We're talking about paclitaxel, which is a pharmacokinetic distribution in the body and elimination. It is not radiation. It does not sit in the body and have a long half-life. So we have to acknowledge that it's a pharmacological dose. For all patients treated with Eluvia in this sub-study, 13 patients, plasma paclitaxel was not quantifiable. That is, it was less than 1/1000th of a milliliter in 11 out of 13 patients at 10 minutes. And in all patients, at subsequent time points, it was non-detectable, 30 minutes and then all the hours that followed that. So paclitaxel in the plasma was not available after 10 minutes in the majority of patients. 1-year mortality in paclitaxel for the paclitaxel-treated patients in both the long lesion and the pharmacokinetic study were 0 at 1 year. Now, moving to the Ranger DCB program, this is a 2 microgram per millimeter squared paclitaxel drug. Ranger SFA trial has 3-year data available for follow-up, and we're going to look at that now. So you see here, this is a randomized trial of 2-to-1 and a relatively small trial, 100 patients. And you see that the characteristics are not different among the two, save for smoking, which was more prevalent in the control arm. Here are the summary of deaths. For all deaths in the 3-year time point, there were 9 deaths out of 65, 13%, 14% in Ranger, and about 11% in the PTA arm. Again, no obvious clustering of deaths as compared to each other. So if you look at the deaths here, again, I'm not going to read them all off, but some cardiac, some non-cardiac deaths. There's 1, 2, 3 cancers out of the 9 deaths here, and there's some multi-organ system organ failure, cardiac decompensation in the control arm. So pretty unremarkable display of death causes. So in conclusions, mortality rates with Eluvia were not greater than contemporary rates observed with non-drug-coated device. For the IMPERIAL trial, it was 2% versus the control of 2.3% as adjudicated by literature, and 3.6% Majestic versus 3.8 2-year control. So that's 3-year versus 2-year. 3-year mortality in the randomized Ranger SFA study did not differ between paclitaxel and non-paclitaxel arms, and patient-level data reveals similar causes of death for paclitaxel and non-paclitaxel treated patients. Thank you.